You're listening to The Luxury Item, the podcast on the business of luxury and the people and companies that are shaping the future of the luxury industry. Here's your host, Scott Kerr.
The summer travel boom is in full swing, with many well-heeled American travelers heading to Europe. After 3 years of pandemic limitations, tourism is expected to exceed 2019 records in some of Europe's most popular destinations this summer, the Paris Olympics being one of the biggest draws. One unique boutique airline that's redefining luxury air travel is Paris-based La Compagnie. Marking its 10th anniversary in business, La Compagnie offers all business-class transatlantic flights from New York to Paris, Nice, and Milan. The airline has carved a niche for itself by offering many of the luxury experiences and amenities of legacy airlines, but at a more approachable price point. La Compagnie has also gained popularity with customers and was recognized by travel and leisure readers as their favorite international airline. My guest on the luxury item is Christian Vernet, CEO of La Compagnie. Christian is a seasoned aviation executive with broad-based experience, international exposure, and background in both technical and financial culture. Christian joined La Compagnie in 2017, taking the helm of the company and leading its business growth. Welcome to the luxury item, Christian.
Thank you, Scott. Hi.
Hi, thank you so much for joining me. I'm glad to be speaking with you. Entrepreneur Franz Evelyn founded La Compagnie in 2014. Where did he see a gap in the business class travel market that wasn't currently being addressed at the time by legacy carriers like Delta and Air France that paved the way for him to jump back in the game to launch La Compagnie?
Yes, Scott. Well, that goes back to a couple of years ago, but I was not part of La Compagnie at the time. But the principle basically is that one could witness that all kind of business travel across the Atlantic in particular was being solely offered by major airlines legacies, would typically require a very high cost for that, with a level of service which was good, I would say, but I mean, not really worth the price difference versus the typical economy or premium economy that we started to see at the time. So the principle was to offer something different to, in particular, leisure passengers who are willing to pay a bit more than economy prices with majors, but to earn a much better level of comfort and travel environment than the legacy offering at the time.
And that's really for my listeners, that's the basic concept behind La Compagnie, correct?
Absolutely, yes. So now we are in 2024, so company is now 10 years old. Within the last 10 years, a lot have occurred within the airline and outside of the airline, obviously with the COVID, but I guess we'll come back to that later on during the conversation. Today, La Compagnie is, as we dub it, the 100% smart business class airline, and we operate a fleet of modern Airbus A321neo aircraft that we received new from Airbus, the manufacturer, in 2019 on the transatlantic network that we operate today, which is between New York, Newark, Paris, Milan, and Nice during the summertime. And if your question relates to what we offer today to our customers,
the luxury amenities that you offer to them.
As far as the product is concerned, obviously our 321neo airplanes are fitted with a full business class cabin with full lie-flat seats, which might not have been the case 10 years ago with the original Boeing 757s, but also a lot of technology which is today available, which is top-notch, such as in-flight entertainment, but also Wi-Fi, high-quality Wi-Fi, which is, by the way, free of charge from gate to gate, which allows passengers to do whatever they need to do during the flight, either working or enjoying streaming, watching films or whatever content they like to have on board an airplane in a lounge, basically at 9 or 10,000 meters of altitude at 900 kilometers per hour. This is the basic principle is we offer basically luxury in a fashion, I would say, which is very comparable to the experience that one could have in a large business jet that is traveling a long haul with a lot of social distanciation on board the airplane, a lot of technology, quiet, comfortable, easy to go. And that's the motto of the level of service we want to bring to passengers.
But from a different price point, but at a lower price point that's more competitive with the legacy carrier.
Absolutely. So my point was regarding the level of service. We and you're right. I mean, the price offerings we have obviously has got a comparative advantage of about 15 to 25% difference in our favor in comparison to competition, which is essentially made of legacies with wide body business class offerings, which are okay as far as the product is concerned, I would say, but which are typically more expensive. On top of having to circumvent the intricacies of having to onboard 250 economy seat passengers on the same airplane, which is obviously taking time and generating delays or making business passengers wait longer than necessary. The experience we have or our passengers have is all different. What we offer is to make everything quick, easy to go, stressless, from airport arrival to check-in to fast track to security or immigration. Same with the lounge. And once you spend some time in the lounge, we call passengers for boarding minutes before the aircraft needs to go. And all that is done within minutes, which is a major significant difference from what the major airlines or legacies are offering today. So we basically offer a very special, dedicated product at cheaper conditions, and our passengers do enjoy that very much. And this is part of our notoriety that we have gained over these last 10 years.
And when you launched 10 years ago, you launched with a single daily flight from New York, Newark, and Paris, Charles de Gaulle on a Boeing 757. And it was fitted with 74 business class seats arranged in a 2-2 that convert to an angled beds. What audience segment were you going after when you launched 10 years ago?
I guess the main target was to tackle the leisure markets, essentially, of high revenue passengers, typically Americans, but also Europeans, but by vast majority Americans, willing to travel to Europe, to France in particular, in, like I said before, in a good level of comfort and services at a price which would be significantly lower than what a competition could offer in business class. And that was the mainstay of the decision to go for a full business class airline back in 2014. And you're right, that was with initially Boeing 757s. They were used airplanes. Obviously, the kind of equipment that the company had in the past, was not of the standard that we do get today on the modern and new airplanes that we put into service to serve our customers. But yet, it was significant improvement for the passengers. On top of leisure passengers, there was also a target to capture some business class corporate from business travel, obviously, typically from small and medium enterprise. Potentially, that was a dream at the time from large corporations, but we all know that large corporations are always either lenient or not swift to move to new solutions being offered. So it took time to attract such corporations to the product we have. We do today have a higher number of these customers, but yet we are very popular into this SME market because we more or less resemble a lot what they are, and this is what they like a lot on top of the pricing that we offer.
And when the company launched around the time the recession was in the rear view mirror for Americans planning to travel, and many of them indulged in upgrades across the board. We also saw major airlines up their game with more flatbed seats, improved catering and entertainment, and they added flights, making it easier for business passengers to have a meeting in Paris or London and immediately return to New York. So in a recovering business class market back then, what was La Compagnie's positioning against the legacy airlines that were already attracting corporate expense account passengers who value convenience over price?
Yeah, so back to the year 2014, 2015, there might have been a gap regarding the process you described very well, regarding the upscaling of the offering from major airlines. But not too far after that, something very significant happened to this industry, which is named COVID. And as you know, COVID has put a stop to airline operation, air travel by a significant portion.
Right.
For a period of, let's say, a year and a half to 2 years, when the borders were closed. And that obviously has brought a lot of significant changes to the industry. First of all, to the customer mindset, but also to the airline, because when the COVID ended, that was late 21, early 22. Basically, we all had to restart everything by inducing and welcoming passengers on board who have suffered not only lack of transportation capability for a long period of time, but who were still very concerned about the COVID itself and the potential risk that travelers were taken by air travel. Now, air travel is very safe from a COVID point of view. We know that the industry as well supported that evidence. But I mean, it took a bit of time for people to reconvene to flying. And actually, the travel revenge phenomenon that took place in spring 2022 was supported by a large amount of leisure travelers who had basically been stopped from a lockdown at home for a long period of time. Mm-hmm. Were really eager to travel again and embrace their willingness to discover or rediscover the world in Europe in particular. So there was a lot of change between the early stage of the airline, 2014, 2015, and what happened after the COVID. After the COVID, we had put in place our A321neo airplanes, which, like I said before, are fitted with the most basically modern equipment that one can imagine flying a business class airline. So we had no longer that comparative disadvantage versus the product, to the opposite. And the travelers were very keen to, and that's a strange aspect of the COVID. Out of the COVID, the consciousness of the not so far away danger of being contaminated by the COVID pushed the passengers in our direction, because basically we have a social distanciation on board our airplane, which is greater than the other airlines, and low density cabin obviously has been a pro to the customer base we have, be corporate, but also be leisure, obviously. And that out of COVID, we have been basically enjoying a very significant increase into the notoriety and a positive approach to la Compagnie by the passengers that we had flown before and the new ones that join us. So, okay, as I just see things change in the environment, in all environments. The COVID obviously was a major change in the world economy, in the world situation. And out of this, the agility of the airline industry has been key to success. And I think La Compagnie has proven that, has been very swift to make changes. In particular, we have changed our network, because instead of having 2 flights a day between New York and Paris only, we reduced that to 1 flight a day, and we have opened Milan to New York, which was an opportunity at the time, given the volume of travel business that was there expected when the COVID ended.
You know, history has not been kind to all business class transatlantic airlines. EOS, Silverjet, and MaxJet didn't last very long. What's different about your business model that has enabled La Compagnie to defy the odds and stay afloat?
Well, if I look at from today's environment, okay, or not to the 2014, which is 10 years ago, but I think one major factor that we need to evidence in this kind of a full business class, small airline, niche airlines, I would tend to say, is we need a flawless operation. That requires modern and efficient aircraft fleets with a top technical behavior. And this is what we get with A321neo. This is the perfect aircraft, from design, from manufacturing, from performance track records to accommodate long haul segments between Western Europe and East Coast in the US. I mean, this is a perfect fit for the type of route. Then we need, obviously, as far as the product is concerned, we do we do take on board business class travelers, be leisure, be corporate, and they are demanding. They pay a higher price than if they fly with economy or premium economy. So their level of expectation is higher, and they want that to be consistent flight after flight, because we do have about 25 to 35% of our passengers on board who are regularly flying with us. So they want to have the same level of quality every time. So we need to be endurant in being able to deliver a customer-centric service to them. Be on the ground and be in flight. That's for sure. And then I would say that's for the demand side. From the airline perspective, we need to have a cost structure which is based on strong efficiencies, so as to be able to offer consistent fair prices. I couldn't say low, because flying business class aircraft is obviously quite expensive anyway. But I mean, we need to offer fair prices and competitive prices to beat the competition, which is majority made from major airlines legacies, flying wide bodies, who have their own system and who are not as efficient as we are in terms of cost per passenger per trip. That's a significant aspect. I mean, we need to be good, and to be good at all times, whatever the fuel price, whatever circumstances into the economy globally, to make sure we can maintain that comparative advantage at all times. And of course, we need a network which is built on relatively speaking strong and solid demand. It would be no sense for sure to open a route which would be very seen on business travelers. So we need a certain volume of business to make sure we capture a fair market share. And with time and reputation and the good quality of service and the pricing we offer, we earn more and more recognition, so more and more market share. But we need to base that development on a market that is worthwhile considering. So that's one of the major initial aspect of the prospective aspect of development that we need to pay a lot of attention.
Is the company profitable now?
Yes, it is. Well, not only the 321neo was a game changer in comparison to the 757, because reliability has been very high since the introduction. Very few operational discrepancies have occurred over time. And that's really significant for an airline which has got a limited number of airplanes. That's for sure. And like I said before, the strange enough is that the COVID has really put the projectors on us, so that we suddenly have appeared as a very dependable and very enjoyable airline for passengers to fly, because they had these concerns during all of the COVID period. And not only all of a sudden we could offer them on a sustainable basis a product which satisfies and meets all of their requirements. So since COVID ended in early 2022, every fiscal exercise we have been running on have been profitable, and we are slated to remain like this, obviously, for a long period of time, which allows the potentiality for us to consider development by further acquisition of airplanes and further development of our network.
So leaning heavily on a small number of high volume routes, how scalable can the company really be?
Well, it's a very interesting and important question. Obviously, we're proven that flying New York, Paris, New York, Milan, and New York, Nice are for us profitable routes for a network. There are more routes to be looked at, obviously, between the US and other main capitals in Europe, whereby the volume of business traffic is significant enough. When I say business traffic, I encompass obviously leisure during the summertime or holiday time, but also corporate travel, obviously, which is important. And so they are, well, the US has got a very significant number of ties with a lot of Western countries in Europe, and there are quite some places where we can consider adding an airplane and having a daily service to New York, with the emphasis on efficiency, quality of service, and price that is going to deliver the ability for us to capture a market share which is significant, sufficient enough for us to be profitable on that route and develop further. So we do have routes that we have elaborated and envisaged as a business case. And the plan in the future, at the time we had more capacity, is to one after the other be able to add more of these routes in our network. And that's going to be also important for large corporations, because like I've approached before, large corporations, they like to have some big networks from the legacies to rely on for their global transport questions and needs. Being a small airline and offering three routes today is a good solution to SMEs and potentially to some of the large corporations that we do work with from now. But it is sure that once we had more city pairs into the network, we are going to be more and more worthwhile to consider for large corporations. So that's a trigger for and a leverage for potential development in the future.
So a year after you launched, you added a New York to London service, but then suspended it in the following year. Some analysts said that it was a combination of poor marketing and the choice of a relatively unknown Luton airport, which is about an hour and a half outside of London. What was the story there? And are there any plans to revisit the New York to London route?
Well, London, I think New York, London is the number one route as far as business travelers are concerned. So, and that was already the case in 2014 when the airline considered development onto London at the time. The selection, you're right, the selection of an adequate airport is very significant. Luton is a low-cost terminal, I would say, airport, and not really aligned with business travel in general. So that was an impediment the airline has to deal with at the time. Second point is that 757 was not the perfect fit for an airline such as La Compagnie at the time. So I mean, there were several factors, but the choice for the airport obviously was one of the more sensitive as far as the business development of that route. So you're right, and the route was suspended about a year after introduction due to lack of commercial success. That's true.
So you're going to go back?
I think I would certainly consider going to London, but something has happened in the meantime. The way the world is going is like this. I mean, we need to face contingency, and the Brexit that you heard of, I'm sure,
Right. Yep.
is a major impediment for a French airline today to fly the routes. That's something we would need to have other, let's say, adaptations into our system to reconsider flying to London. It is somewhere in our books, but not for the near term.
So 10 years after its inauguration, today, La Compagnie airline has grown and expanded with additional transatlantic services, including flights between New York and Paris, Milan, and Nice. There's a blend of leisure and business destinations there. Are your passengers mostly flying La Compagnie for business, vacations, or leisure?
Well, actually, we rely on the mix of leisure and business travelers. And the proportion, well, varies because there is obviously some level of seasonality into the demand. But overall, on a year basis, it's about 70% for leisure, 30% for business. And the other dimension we do see and witness is that in the past, if 10 years ago or 5, 6 years ago, just before COVID, the tendency for especially large corporations travel was to fly in a single week, live on Tuesday and come back on a Thursday or Friday. More and more we go and we do see that even SMEs, that may be for price concerns, but also large corporations tend to induce more of the leisure dimension into their travel selection dates. And we do see that mechanism that typically enlarge the duration, the stay of such business travelers. One of the main reasons behind this is, well, despite the enjoyment of being able to visit a place and take a bit of time somewhere, is that obviously the cost of travel to buy the tickets is obviously less expensive if you stay over a weekend. So that's the standard rule, as we call it, which to my opinion is a major driver It's not the only one, but it's a major driver behind the scene to see leisure coming more and more into the business travel.
So post-pandemic, are you seeing more couples and families on your flights?
Actually, after the reopening of the borders, after the COVID more or less ended, like I say, the our revenue customers were very keen and very willing to travel. We did see, and that happened during basically the spring of 2022 and summer 2022. We did see a lot of these families traveling on board, more than business travel. Business travel has been a bit shy after the COVID ended for all kind of reasons. Cost is obviously something, the willingness of corporations to protect furthermore their employees for potential contamination with COVID has been there. The development of web conferences, a cost driver typically, as being one of the mainstay for the business travel to shy away from air travel. So what we've seen is initially after COVID, it was very strong in demand into leisure. I would tend to say that that portion is still there, but the business travel is recuperating slowly, but certainly year after year. I don't think the industry has reached yet the level of corporate travel that would prevail before the COVID. And I think IATA thinks that globally, not only on the New York-Paris route, but it would take another year, 2 or 3 years for that to stabilize to pre-COVID levels. But it is getting back market share. That's certainly true. And the cost concern that we do see today among all industries, all corporations, is making La Compagnie more likable for them, because from a budget point of view, even though we don't have a network which is as developed as the majors, we do have some level of offering in terms of pricing, which is a strong argument for them to come and fly with us. So this is what we see, and this is very encouraging for us when we look at the future to be able to tackle the markets that we serve today, but also the markets that we plan to serve in business development plans that we have.
So what goes into determining which new routes will be more strategic to invest in?
Well, obviously it's a several factor item. You need to look at the demand side in the business travel to see what are the current volumes or pre-COVID volumes for point-to-point travel, what's the impact and of seasonality, because that's something to deal with, obviously. The share of leisure versus business travelers in the market that we consider for service in the future. What is the offerability in terms of connection for the passengers who want to fly beyond the point we serve, okay? Even though this is not our major concern at this time, having selected cities which are very strong in terms of a point-to-point demand, that's something we look into. What's the GDP per capita? Also, that's something we typically look into, because obviously we address ourselves to a certain portion of the traveler population which is demanding, but who is also willing to pay for a premium to get a premium service, and this is what we are all about. So obviously GDP per capita is one also factor we need to look at. On the supply side, obviously we look at what's the current position of competition, who are likely to be the new competitors coming into play in the years to come, what kind of a pricing strategy they have, and how the pricing can evolve so that we can elaborate a plan which address frequencies, schedule, prices for all categories of travelers we have. And all that is basically boiled down into quite a complex model to elaborate which route we are going to open as number 1, number 2, and number 3, and the like.
Is La Compagnie involved in choreographing the pre or post-flight experience to remove the whole chaos that surrounds things like the TSA screening, customs and immigration, access to airport lounges, etc.?
Yeah, obviously that's a concern we all have, because whatever the efforts and the quality of the product we deliver during the flight, yes, you're right. We need to try to facilitate the pre and post flight experience for any passenger. So with this concern we have, and it's the reason why we moved away from Charles de Gaulle in 2018, moved to Orly airport in Paris, for instance, because it's closer to the city. Since last week, basically, for instance, you can reach downtown Paris from Orly with the opening of a new extension of the Metro Line 14 just before the opening of the Olympics for 2024. So that's bringing an increased facilitation for passengers to get access to the airport. Once on the airport side, what we offer typically is fast tracks as much as we can, as often as accessible to airlines, to make sure that the time spent by our passengers to go through formalities, be immigration or security, is as small as possible. And obviously, you mentioned, you're right. I mean, we do have lounges in all airports that we operate and serve, which are close to the boarding gates, that we are very keen to making sure that the trajectory on the ground of our passengers, if I may call that this way, is as simple, as efficient, as swift as possible. And I think we're good at this, and that makes a real difference in the opinion of passengers. And because the least thing they want to have as an experience for the ground part of their travel is to stay hours trapped in queues, and that's very significant. Now, regarding obviously immigration, there are some aspect of, for instance, pre-test access is something that we will soon offer to our American passengers flying back to the US. I think that will start in October this year. So as much as we can, we try our best to access to whatever facilitation of the to the passengers to go through the different stages of the ground trajectory, and that's very significant for the air travel itself. We are already in the excellence part of it, so we need to work furthermore into the other aspect. Once again, we select, say, airports which are close by the cities that we serve, and we select. Orly is a good example of that, and to some extent, Newark is also a good example. Human-sized airports, because I'm a traveler myself. I'm sure you are. The least thing I want to be entrenched into is going to a very huge airport where basically you work a mile and a half to get access to your access door to the airplane. This is cumbersome. I mean, this kills the benefit of having a good business class treatment done away on the airline. So we package everything into making sure we have, as much as we can, an excellent service from A to Z. This is what we're driving day to day, our business.
I want to talk about your fleet. So La Compagnie started with a single Boeing 757 aircraft, which has been a workhorse for the aviation industry for decades. You retired the 757 after several years in favor of what you've been talking about in our conversation, the Airbus A321neo planes. How has the Airbus planes been a game changer for your business and passengers?
Well, the 321neo is by design a game changer. It's the first time in the history of aviation where a relatively speaking, well-densified airplane, narrow-body, is able to fly a very long distance in economic constraints which are sustainable and viable for an airline. The 757 was a bit into this category, and this is why we, as in a lot of other airlines, and 75 is still crossing the Atlantic these days, has been there for us. But the 321neo, I'm going to give you just one figure. We have at least like two more passengers on board our A321 than our 757s we had before. It's two more passengers, and we burn 30% less fuel per trip. 30%. That's very intense as a saving in terms of fuel cost, but also as a CO2 emissions. So that's one of the aspects. But technology of the Neo airplanes, 321 in particular, is that the aircraft is very well designed, manufactured, very reliable. If you look at our dispatch rate, it is It is top class. I don't say that the 757 was not at the time able to achieve that, but that was 25 years ago. The more the airplanes age, the more difficult it is to support them with a high level of and standard of dispatch on time performance. The 321 is really the industrial product to deliver the product we want to propose to our passengers. So this is one. Efficiency, 30% fuel efficiency improvement is, I don't need to insist too much on that. That's a major cost differentiator factor, because you know that fuel is about what? 20, depends on the fuel price, between 25 and 30% of the cost per hour of an airplane. So if you burn 30% fuel less, you imagine what impact it has on variable costs. So it is a very good airplane at shaving off variable costs. Obviously, the aircraft fixed cost, the lease of an airplane of a 321 is more than 757, but the difference is well balanced by the rest of the cost of the operation. Next aspect, noise. All airports today are getting more and more concerned about noise emissions. I think the 321 Neo, I don't want to advertise too much for Airbus and for we've Safran LEAP engines on board, but I think Pratt and GTF engines are good at this also, but it's a very efficient, and the noise emission level is very low, and that's very significant for the people living in the surroundings of an airport. So the more we go, the more sensitivity there will be on this aspect. So we are there and in advance from what is going to be required in the years to come. So that's another factor. And globally, I mean, the level of comfort you get on board the cabin of 321 Neo is the aircraft is quieter. It is in line with the level of technology we put into the seats, CI-FI, the Wi-Fi. So globally, it's a top of the age product that we put airborne to the service of our passengers. And I think we could not do that flying a 757 anymore. So that's, I mean, we are slated to have more of these birds. Today, the airplanes we fly are basically our A321 Neo LR, for stands for long range. The range is between 4,000 and 4,500 nautical miles. We could consider down the road adding some so-called XLR airplanes, which do have another 4 to 500 nautical mile range, which opens the way by the way to serving routes which are beyond New York, flying westbound, and beyond Paris and Milan and Nice when we consider flying eastbound. So I think the technology is pushing us to consider opening and developing a network furthermore, that's for sure.
It seems like over the past decade, many international airlines have phased out their first-class cabins as their business cabins have become more sophisticated. Some question whether there would still be a need for a separate ultra-premium cabin, and some airlines argue that their new business cabins exceed the comforts and amenities of other carriers' first-class offerings. But post-pandemic, everything changed, and there was a renewed demand for first class. Passengers are looking for a luxurious experience. The aviation industry has been responding to that demand by reinvigorating first and business class cabins, as well as more and larger lounges to accommodate swelling numbers of travelers willing to pay for the higher priced tickets or elite status or high fee rewards credit cards. Does this demand to fly in the highest class throw La Compagnie into the fray of raising the bar on its offerings?
Well, the first class question has been going up and down along the time in aviation history. To my very honest judgment, I think first class today is to be considered more seriously by airlines who are flying very long routes. Okay, Paris, New York, or Nice, New York, Milan, New York. Basically, it's 8 to 9 hour route on the longest segment. I don't think the public in general needs a first class. Okay, they need a very good business class for this kind of route. First class, I think is more related to a very specific submarket into the very premium category, and this is not the one we are looking at. Okay, because we offer services that I said not discounted rate, but I mean at prices which are very competitive And what we want to do is to make sure that our business class offering is being kept at a very high level of quality of offering. Maybe the thing that we shall consider in the future, especially if we enlarge the network with aircraft who can accommodate longer routes with a bigger range, maybe is to decrease slightly the number of seats on board our airplanes from 76 to something like 68. That would allow us to increase the pitch furthermore, so bring even more level of comfort for passengers on flights which are a bit longer than the ones we serve today. But if there is demand for first class today, well done for the ones who want to invest into that. It's a very expensive piece of equipment that you need to put on board. There is, to my honest judgment, a very thin market for that. Some airlines do need to serve that because it's part of their, let's say, product positioning strategy. La Compagnie is not into that category at this time.
So you don't ever see a time where La Compagnie micro segments the business segment of your plane to a more premium class?
More premium, well, if you think first, no, but more premium, that increasing the level of comfort, like I said, increasing the pitch is going obviously to provide even more space to the passenger. I think that's, to my opinion, something that some passengers may be keen to buy and have for longer flights. But at the same time, we do have all of the amenities of a very premium business class today. So if we get, might be some very peripheral aspect we bring to the service, but a first class service, no, it is not into our DNA at the time. I don't think this coming in the years to come.
So everybody's talking about sustainability. The airline industry faces strong headwinds during the next decade as policymakers and consumers raise concerns about the environmental impact of air travel. But the passengers that are flying in first and business class are paying high prices for cabins that take up more area per seat. They want everything that goes away from sustainability. What approach has La Compagnie been taking to reduce fuel consumption and greenhouse emissions?
Well, it is, for obvious reasons, given the situation in the world today, a very sensitive question. Climate change is a concern to a lot of people in this world, and more in the governments or influential actors into the industry and around this industry. We're being asked as airlines to do more and more to preclude the emission of CO2 into the atmosphere in particular. We have a dual concern because we are part of the world. We know that, albeit we have one of the best airplanes category in the world, we do burn fuel and we do emit CO2. So we pay the utmost attention to making sure that we do this right. So we have, besides the selection of the A321, and I mentioned again, we reduced fuel burn by 30% versus what we had before, versus what some of our competitors do fly still today across the Atlantic. So I think we are quite ahead of competition is concerned. And if you are looking at a CO2 emission per passenger on a transatlantic flight, for instance, I think we are top of the class with our current configuration. No other airline really can offer the service we offer on business class with a CO2 emission standard per passenger, which is at the level we have. I mean, we are being competition by 20 to 40% on average. Okay, so that's the outcome of the technology we are flying and the way we fly. This is one. Now there are other aspects we are also doing, but to a lesser extent, regarding the amount of CO2 emission, is that obviously we try to keep the aircraft weight to a minimum. We have basically banned paper from everything into the aircraft and cockpit through digitalization processes in all of our basically documentation or data transformation and treatment, that's for sure. On the catering side, we try to, well, not only try, we have removed plastic from on board to go to paper most of the time, as much as we can, for sure. From a fly ops aspect, also there are certain policies into the airline that other airlines have also adopted, such as single engine taxiing. We try to have straight approach as much as we can to reduce the time we stay in the air airborne, so to reduce fuel. So I mean the whole airline is behind our day-to-day attempts to reduce fuel burn as much as we can. But from purely emission standpoint, you know that IATA has committed that by 2050, the whole aviation industry will be we'll basically have zero emission. So it's a long way to run. We do have sustainable aviation fuel on board today to a small number only because the ability of the market to supply this SAF is limited. But okay, we try our best to be as efficient as we can from the design, from the specification into the service we fly. But I think the industry has got a long way to go.
It's been said that one of the disadvantages of an all business class carrier like La Compagnie is the major commercial airlines have a large route network that can get you anywhere you'd like to go, not just from New York to Paris or Milan. And if I'm vested in, United Airlines frequent flyer program and use United for most of my travel to and from New York, why would I choose a different carrier just when going to Paris or Milan? And if I'm at United's Polaris class level, I have access to a really nice Polaris lounge system. So am I the segment you're speaking to?
Well, we speak and address all segments of the business, including the large international companies, large corporations. But you're right, by their willingness to simplify their needs as much as possible, they tend to address most of their transportation plans to a single or dual entry, being a major airline, typically because the network is there. So we work with some of them more and more because they're getting more and more cost concerned, and we offer better deals to them than the majors may offer. Yet we need to develop our network furthermore to be able to entice more of these large corporations, and that will take time in the future. But as far as SMEs are concerned, we are the perfect fit because we resemble them, and typically it is rare that an SME has got some plans and interests into several countries or several states in the US. Typically, they go, if New York is their place of business, they would stay in New York. So we do, our offering today match and their needs. But we are thinking of getting further beyond that point, also including some potential connection agreements with some airlines to be able to offer a destination which is not only New York, but a connection in New York, which is going to be very easy to proceed, including luggage. And we are working on that so that to be able to offer more destinations that we do actually today. That's a factor of development that we are keen about. It's going to take us some more months to get to this point, but we are getting there.
So what does the summer operating schedule look like in terms of bookings? I would imagine the Summer Olympics in Paris has been a boom for the airline.
Well, summer 2024 is announced, June, July, August. Is announced as being quite strong, and the average load factor we're going to get at the end is about 90% overall, which is in our settings quite strong. Okay, for a full business class airline. The Olympics have obviously not really boosted the traffic as originally expected. I think there are several reasons to that. Obviously, some of our repetitive customers from the leisure aspect, some of them are a bit, let's say, do find some kind of a deterrent factor with the fact with heavy crowds. They want to stay away from that and the hurdle of the passion that the Olympics may generate from time to time. So I think we have lost some of these passengers, but at the same time we've gained some others driven by the Olympics, especially in the corporations who do have some group requirements for transportation between the US and Paris. And so overall, I would say that the increase over the last year is going to be about 4 to 5%. One could have imagined it would be more significant, but I think the deterrent factor has been playing a role more significant than expected in the mitigation as far as destination is concerned for some of the leisure passengers.
So will you be announcing the opening of any new routes in the next 12 months?
I wish, Scott. The point is that we are slated to do so, but we are, all of us in the industry, dependent upon the ability of the industry to supply airplanes.
Right.
Out of the COVID, this has been and is still a major impediment to the airline industry. While traffic is supposed to increase 4 to 5% per annum globally around the globe, we are all injured by the fact that the ability of Boeing and Airbus, two of them are the most significant ones we may think of, are hampered by the post-COVID supply chain logistic issues. And today, basically, we're going to get the next airplane is going to arrive in 2026. Okay, we are working on that, and this is what we have in mind. And it is more or less taking twice the time it took us to bring the A321neo in 2019. So you imagine the difference. There's little we can do about this because the whole industry is suffering from that. The small airlines like us, but also the majors. And so that's a significant impediment we need to face and we need to live with. So more destinations will be announced slightly before 2026, but for implementation starting 2026, that's for sure.
So my final question, Christian, is the luxury item question, which I ask all my guests. So if you were stranded on a deserted island and you could only have one single luxury item with you, what would that luxury item be? It can't be any form of air or water transportation, so you can't call any of your friends in the company to pick you up, or anything that requires mobile service, so you can call somebody to pick you up. So it's just you on this deserted island with palm trees, lots of sand, lots of ocean, maybe some debris washed up on shore. What would that single luxury item you would like to have with you?
Interesting question, Scott. From my vision, if I was stranded in such an island, I think the exposure to culture would still be my number one goal. And I think I would be very keen to having access to a large book and music library, be digital, to make sure that I can open myself to whatever cultural environment I'm keen to explore worldwide. So I think that would be, I don't know if it is, per se a luxury. It could be a luxury if you were on an island, deserted island, but I think this is what I would be keen about, yes.
Christian Vernet, CEO of La Compagnie, thank you so much for joining me on The Luxury Item.
Thank you, Scott.
That's it for this episode of the Luxury Item Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. If you found this useful and entertaining, I would be really grateful if you can share it with a friend or colleague. I would love it if you subscribe so you never miss an episode. And while you're there, be sure to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. It really helps other listeners find us. The Luxury Item Podcast is a production of Silvertone Consulting. I'm your host, Scott Kerr. Until next time.